the chancellor asked if I would come and serve, and that to me was an honor to do, and I was flattered that he asked. In doing so, I needed to come with a set of things that I know are important to the ethos of an institution, in that I've done this work before and been doing it quite a while. But I also know that there's so many things I don't know about Albany and about Albany State that I yet have to learn. Yet there are some fundamentals as well to ensuring that people have something to follow. I don't think you are asked to be in a position of leadership or a position of guiding an organization, an institution, without having some roadmap that you can share. So I have 5 things that I believe are really critical to my own learning, as well as to the things that I'm going to ask us to do as an institution in the near term, and even possibly the longer term. And the first one is really understanding our culture. What is the culture of Albany State? What is the culture of Albany as a city? What is the cultural impact that our students feel when they come? Why do they come? And how does culture impact the way we do our work, collectively, individually, and otherwise? How do we measure our success? And cultures shape everything. When you go into an organization, the culture will tell you whether or not it's a place that you want to be.
Indeed.
The second thing is institutions of higher education, in particular universities like ours, have a single source revenue model. That means that tuition and fees are our primary source of income, and that our allocations from the state and support from the state and other parts are designed to help us, but we have to help ourselves through enrollment growth and those things. I happen to believe that what the business side of me says is that single source revenue models are not sustainable. And so part of the other opportunity that I think I have is, how do we foundationally lay the groundwork for finding other ways and other sources of revenue to sustain and grow the institution in terms of our programming and what we do and how we do it, and how do we prepare every student learner for the 21st century, making sure they have the competencies to compete. Every single student that leaves here should be well equipped to not only earn and get a return on the investment they've made in the institution and in themselves, but also do it sooner than later.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely believe that the academic enterprise has to be run like an enterprise, which means that we have to have a good understanding of revenue and expenses in a very real way. But I think one of the things the academy or the academic community often is not able to do as clearly, and we're going to strive to do this a little better, is to make sure not only are we transparent, but that we engage the faculty, the staff, the stakeholders outside the university, the community members even, certainly our alumni, in actually how we have to run the institution in order for it to sustain itself. And that means we have to understand that it's great to have a lot of programs. It's great to think about the shiny new object. But we have to be very clear about how we invest resources in every object that we choose.
Sure.
Because our customer depends on it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a saying that says, sometimes, and this is my business background would tell you, and I've lived or worked in about 60 countries around the world, and I've lived in almost every state in the United States. You have to make what you can sell and not sell what you can make. And what that means is academic enterprises often have courses and degrees and programs that they believe are best for the students.
Yes.
But it's not based on necessarily what the market says is best for the student. And if the student doesn't know, then we run the risk of guiding them incorrectly. I was listening recently to another group of scholars talk about this misalignment between industry and the academic community. And the industry has increasingly said over the last 2 decades, you're not giving me people that have the readiness capability for my industry, for my work, for my company. And we have to get better at that. And I think Albany State is a place that we can do that and do that even better than we are today. Share them on parallel. Probably my most transformational experience is actually when I went to Fisk University as an undergraduate student. I went to visit the school when I was in the 10th grade on a college tour because my grandmother wanted me to go. And I got to Nashville, and in those days, the college recruiter actually drove to Pittsburgh in her car, and we were in the top higher percent of the student graduating class, or of the what we call the scholars class. And 5 of us got in her car, all 5 of us, 4 students and her, drove back to Nashville during Thanksgiving weekend. And during that weekend, we had a chance to live in a dormitory, see the campus, and we had an opportunity to visit students who were actually having the Greek show during the Thanksgiving weekend. And when we saw the excitement and the activism and just the vibrancy of the campus, we were just over the moon with, wow, this was, so for a kid, coming, that hadn't been very many places by that time, that was just over the moon for me. I made up my mind that that was where I was going to go to college. And even though I was a pretty good student, had a chance to go a number of other schools, when the seniors were gathered and some of the recruiters from Harvard and other places came for the top students, I had made up my mind that I don't care what they offered or what they did. If they chose me, or even if they wanted me to apply, I wasn't going to, because I had had that experience. And when I got there as a freshman in 1972, I was just blown away at where I had landed. And to this day, if I could rewind back to my arrival there in Nashville and all the wonderful people that I met along the way and the experiences that I had, which is coming off of the civil rights era of the late 60s, I would go back in a second, even if it was just for a few moments. The second experience that I had was running an international enterprise, which was transformative for me from a business standpoint, because running a multinational organization outside the country is very different than running one inside the country. Yeah. And I had these 20 countries that I was responsible for, which was 20 presidents and 20 legislatures and 20 versions of Congress, but also all the people, and then numerous tribes and numerous languages and products that we wanted to sell in those countries. It was fascinating for me to learn about my own history, because that's, of course, my ancestral home in Africa. But also, how does it work today, and how do we as a company influence the consumer habits of people that have a totally different experience than, let's say, where I came from. So that was transformative. And then there were all the nuances of, converting currencies in these local countries to U.S. currency. And so my treasurer and my team arbitraging just the currencies was a real challenge at times. But I'll tell you, I learned so much. And I guess the final piece to tack on to that, because it falls in the middle of these two experiences, is when I was 16, just about 16, we lost our house, and so I was homeless. And lived on the street for quite some time. And I think that transformative experience was a precursor to when I went to college. And then when I got to be an executive in the corporate world, and it has and does every day influence what I do today. Well, um, the whole irony of what you just described is I think we talk about teaching as if it's one way.
Mm-hmm.
The way I think our institution and many of us in this space have to rethink that teaching is binary.
Yeah.
That our student learners are teaching us, and they don't have a quiz or a test that they're going to give us out of a book.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be how we treat them, how we respond to the trauma and the lived experiences that they bring.
Yes.
They're judging our ability to respond to them on the basis of how we respond to those things, in the context of understanding that they come with that trauma, but then so do we. I teach a class on emotional intelligence, and one of the things that is so apparent to me is the lack of awareness of so many of us about the impact that we have on others, because we're so concerned about the impact that others are having on us.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned earlier, communities live in their feelings.
Sure.
Human beings often are conditioned to live in their feelings. The brain is a very protective mechanism of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at brain science in general, feelings are very much a part of how the brain synthesizes our actions and activities. It responds to stimulus. But we have to really be mindful that the era in which this institution was founded and built, it's not the same era. And so what do we do differently?